Welcome in, Falcons fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for more Atlanta Falcons content. And week 2 is upon us. It is tomorrow. Falcons take on the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, the Falcons go get this game 0-1. Vikings 1-0. But a very interesting matchup as the NFL is looking at this and framing this as the national championship from 2 years ago rematch. So, had to bring my guy, Berto, onto the show. He's host of Reporting Eligible. He does Bleacher Report Atlanta Falcons content as well. This man is really all over the spectrum if you think about it. So really appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule to come onto the show and share something with you, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. Bright sunny day up here in the Northeast, man. So it can't be too displeasant of how things are going this morning. But I'm happy to be here with you, and just an honor, like always, just to share the platform with you, man.
Hey, man, always great to have you on, man, and talk ball with you, man, for sure. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So Falcons obviously coming into this week. I want to start with this. I've kind of said throughout the week to me that I think the Falcons have had kind of a silent confidence in terms of how the game went last week. We kind of did what we kind of wanted to do in certain aspects. We just didn't finish. We didn't execute fully. The turnovers, like they said, they could have had 3-4 turnovers last week.
Yeah.
Close on sacks, different things of that nature. And, you kind of see all the players post on Instagram, like, basically almost just like it's week 1, we move to the next week. Like there's not like a sense of, there's nervousness in the building. And maybe that's because of different elements. But coming into this game with Minnesota, you go against a quarterback who still the jury's out on, J.J. McCarthy. We don't know what he is yet. He did play well in the second half of the Monday Night Football game, but struggled really in the first 3 quarters. And so this is going to lead for an interesting matchup. My first question to you is, with the matchup, especially the defense versus Minnesota's offense, let's start there. What are you looking at seeing this week from them? What do you want to see against Minnesota? Especially, really, their biggest threat is Justin Jefferson, obviously. That's where your threat is. But what do you want to see from them against Minnesota's offense this week, especially with them not having their starting tackle, JJ?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think you have to key in on where's Justin Jefferson. Wherever he goes, obviously coverage responsibilities have to swing his way. No knock to Justin. He's just all world, right? And he can wreck a game with the snap of a finger, you know what I mean? So we got to hone in on him and make sure that he's in check at all times. Chicago did a great job last week keeping him in check. Four receptions, 44 yards, and that lone TD, I think it came in the fourth quarter. Atlanta has to take a page from what the Bears did, schematically in the secondary to just negate him, because you want to put this game in J.J. McCarthy's hands. How can he respond without having his top target? Obviously, they're already out. Jordan Addison, who's suspended. So you really have relatively unknowns on the rest of the roster. Naylor, the wide receiver there, did, a couple things last week. But now then after him, TJ Hawkinson, right, wasn't really impactful last week. And, with this Falcons defense, I think we can quiet the tight end room for Minnesota, especially with Divine Diablo and his way of playing, the physicality, the speed, his coverage ability. That's a wanted aspect to a position where we missed on that last year. Hawkinson went to work on us, and then it trickles down into the running back room. Jordan. I forget his name, Jordan Matthews or something
Madison.
Like that.
Oh,
Madison, yeah. No, Matthews, Mason, Jordan Mason, that's what it is. So Jordan Mason took off for the Chicago Bears. They kept Aaron Jones in check. So what am I saying with this, right? I'm saying is the Falcons as a defense have to put the pressure on McCarthy. The Bears did an excellent job in 5-man fronts generating pressure in Atlanta, who last week finished in the 40% percentile as far as rushing. Can that element tick up a little bit? Christian Darrisaw is not playing. They're putting in another backup left tackle. Atlanta has to make them pay in that regard. Put it in JJ's hands. See if Ulbrich can confuse the second-year quarterback with disguises and, just different looks that he didn't see week 1. So that's key for me. What can Ulbrich do to, really confuse JJ and Jay McCarthy, and see where JJ is at lined up at all times.
Yeah, and I think also another point of focus is going to be I heard, I think it was Jesse Bates who said they're going to probably use Billy Bowman a little bit differently this week. They're going to have him more in the box this week, kind of to help with the potential of JJ McCarthy scrambling. We know he's a bit of a mobile guy.
Yeah.
I think they said maybe a little bit faster than Baker when he's like straight line speed, maybe. But the containment was an issue at times last week.
It was.
So
Yes.
I think they're trying to make sure that they have maybe like Billy Bowman, they kind of use like kind of like a box safety, but also out in coverage all over the place. So he can play very key into this game this week. And so, but also it's on the defensive line to also have that containment. I think there were obviously times over pursue, he gets out. Obviously, there was one last week. James Pearce Jr. got held. They didn't call it.
They didn't call it,
whatever. But let me talk about James for a second. How important do you think this could be a game of for him? This could be because he is kind of the guy who people are kind of looking at as like the pass rusher for this team. He got close last week. I think he led all rookies or tied for first in pressures for rookie defensive ends last week. Do you think this is a game where James Pearce kind of pops out a little bit more?
I think so. 4 QB pressures last week. Sure, like you mentioned, he finished tops as far as rookies are concerned. But yeah, you have another grand opportunity to like really stick out. They're going to probably put him on Christian Darrishaw's side, who's going to see the backup playing in his spot. And I think with one game under his belt, I think it's going to be influential to him and how he gets ready or he prepares for this next matchup. Everything is in front of him. He just has to finish. We see the quality. We see the burst. We see it all. He came as advertised. Now, sure, it doesn't show up on the stat books. Of course, he didn't get a sack, but he did pressure. He did come with it. And, and the way that, Tampa Bay was blocking within their offensive line. Obviously, there was there was other things going on in the middle of that defense that I'm sure that we'll get into in terms of our defensive tackles. But James Pearce Jr., his presence was felt on Sunday.
Yeah, I definitely think I think there's that conversation where it's like, how much should we expect the rookies to impact the game? Because you sometimes, because like I said, I think what the highest sack total for a rookie last year was 4 last year. So like, I think some people are like, but still look at this, think he should have like 10 sacks this year. And it's like, all right, like, maybe not, but like, let's not go crazy here. Because
that would be a bonus. That would be a bonus. And we saw with Jared Verse. Jared Verse, I think, is the person you're talking about. He generated 77 quarterback pressures, but only had 4 sacks. So it's the impact overall that you can have on the game. Sacks are important 100%. But if your pressure negates to ends up in a turnover or it negates extra yards being had, then you're doing your job exactly like you're supposed to. Sacks, I guess, to everybody is everything, but I think overall, it's the overall impact you have. Like you see what Jared Verse was able to do to allow guys like Kobe Turner and company to really feast on the quarterback. Everybody on that defensive line was damn near unblockable at times, but that's because Jared Verse had a big say in it. Now James Pearce Jr. can't do that. I feel for the Atlanta Falcons. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna take a little bit of time. We all knew that his skill set did need some refining, and I think with every passing game he's going to get better. So I expect a better James Pearce Jr. on Sunday night, and in the bright lights. Who knows? There's a different switch that might be flipped. So who knows, man? He might come out and get 2 sacks, and hey, that's great. That'd be great for us, man. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be fantastic. He could impact the game in different ways.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned kind of the defensive tackles, and let's kind of key it a little bit on Ruke. I think a lot of people feel like Ruke had a good game last week. Obviously, the roughing the passer penalty,
the
take
flop.
that however you want. But people felt like he did a good job moving the pocket a little bit, kind of showing what I guess you would want to see from him. I know people were kind of on alert when Norlis was first on the depth chart and was like, "Oh, what does it be for Ruke? 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick." I'm not putting that much stock in. My 3rd round pick is slightly better than my 2nd round pick. Like, I mean, they're not that far apart. But how impactful do you think he needs to be in this week's game? Because he's kind of the guy who I think is kind of the defensive tackle that you would say right now probably has the most pop in that group.
Yeah, he's probably the fastest in terms of first step and being able to penetrate a gap. So that's exactly what we're going to need, and especially in this Minnesota, their interior, which they're pretty solid. It's remade, so we need Rook to be at his absolute best. Last week, he was one of the most defensive tackles double teamed, and if the graphic showed, it was him, Omanyata, and then Dorless. Obviously, whatever Ruke was doing last week was noticeable enough that they had to key in on him. This week, yeah, just try to bring the same intensity. And if you have a little bit of extra gas left in the tank, man, just leave it all out there. But Ruke is going to be key in this game and disrupting JJ McCarthy. There were times last week where his penetration alone moved Baker out of his spot a lot of the times, which caused a lot of incomplete passes down the line or down the field, and it just serves as great of a job the defense did overall. We held Baker Mayfield for under 200 yards passing. I think we could do the same thing to JJ McCarthy, who only put up 143 yards passing, and they glazed him, putting him as NFC Player of the Week. So. Yeah, I think Ruke has an important role this week. So not just Ruke, but Brandon Dorlus as well. He's another name to keep an eye on also.
Yeah, definitely. I think those guys get back to the game. That'll definitely help. Obviously, if you get a quarterback off the spot, that becomes effective for the defense, can mess up timing, and then that can maybe lead to potential turnovers, which I think, like I said, a lot of Falcons, defenders have mentioned there was a lot of turnovers left on the table last week. Yeah. But that's why they feel good, because it's like we're in position. We just got to make the play. And so let's go to that secondary. Obviously, we talked about what they kind of have to do with Justin Jefferson, but a lot of people have been giving a lot of praise to Xavier Watts. A lot of people think he was very close multiple times last week. And Jesse Bates, he took responsibility. He said, "I had 2 mental errors on that last drive." He was like, I could have been better, because and then obviously Jesse's one of those guys. We know what he's about. We know what he brings to the table. And I know some people are kind of like, Mike Hughes, the last one. Okay, depending on if you feel about assignments, zones, whose responsibility was what. Obviously, Ibuka had 2 touchdowns last week. Now he's not going against an Ibuka-like player this week, but still, a guy who is scrappy and gets in there. So, how do you think the Falcons secondary is going to take on that challenge this week? Especially, do you think that they're going to be maybe aggressive, looking, maybe pressing for turnovers? Not pressing, but just being more aggressive to try to create those mistakes against JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I think it's right there. The mistakes, right? The communication has to be pretty much on point, right? It always has to be, but in this game, you could even say it has to be flawless. Again, JJ is a guy that can wreck a game if not contained. So you definitely want to be on cue with your, fellow defensive backs on where to be, where your spot needs to be. To that Jesse Bates comment that you made, about the Mike Hughes situation, he even admitted it, and we broke it down on Reporting Eligible on Wednesday. Jesse Bates just got a bit aggressive, thinking that Baker was going to go underneath, which left Mike Hughes, who was in great position to make a play on the ball against Ibuka, but that's a window where Jesse should have been. I don't think that we're going to see that this week. I think Jesse, I think he's going to bring his A game. Obviously, we spoke about Xavier Watts. I think we're going to probably see a better performance. Dare I say he's going to get his first INT in this game, because he was that close. He was really good in his coverage assignments, and one of them, man, he was just a tick late, and he could have intoed the ball, on that first Ibuka touchdown. In this game, against the Vikings, I think, Jerry Gray just has to, get in these guys' heads and tell them, listen, this is an all too important game. Obviously, there's a lot on the line. Falcons cannot afford to go 0-2. But as far as the secondary, just, do your assignment, do your job. I'm interested to see this tidbit. Will AJ Terrell follow Justin Jefferson wherever he goes? I think that would be, beneficial to the Falcons, as when that matchup was had last year, AJ kept Justin in check. I think he only had like 17 yards receiving, something like that. Don't quote me, but something relatively low. And it was just when they started moving him away and featuring inside is where it got out of containment. But overall, I think the secondary just has to do their part, do their job. Don't overthink it. Play to your scheme, and I think they should be fine on Sunday night.
Yeah, and I think overall, Jeff Ulbrich, you can kind of see what he's trying to do with this defense. You can kind of see it. And like I said, I mean, we haven't talked about Divine Diablo, but he had a great game, and just I feel like the defense. I came out of last week saying, I think we have a good defense here. I just think I feel like there's just a lot of growth and just continuity that comes throughout a season.
Yeah.
It, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I think that's something that can create optimism.
Yeah, it could. I mean, I'm sure. I'm certainly, optimistic. I didn't see many red flags from the defense that make me feel otherwise. Right? It definitely left me more optimistic going into week 2 than as opposed to I did last year going into week 2. Obviously, 2 different schemes, and Ulbrich, he's a rah rah guy. Like,
Mhm.
he's fiery, and you can see the defense playing with his intensity. So it's like Ulbrich is vicariously living through all of these defensive players with that energy, and you love to see that. So yeah, I'm optimistic that the defense, like you mentioned, will grow, within the scheme and system itself as time goes on. So I'm good with the defense, man. I feel
Yeah,
good where we're at. Offensively, it's a different question.
I'm dead. Well, that's where we're about to. That's where we're about to go next. So we'll start at the quarterback position. Obviously, Michael Penix Jr.
Oh
You know,
man.
really, I think he had a strong performance last week with some of the things he had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, offensive line shaky at times. Really, no running game. Lost
Yeah.
strength at the end of the game. You didn't have Mooney coming into the game, and
Mm-hmm.
overall, I think he did a really good job. And I think the one thing that you see is that Todd Bowles known for blitzing you, just blitzing you.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
against young quarterbacks.
Yep.
And I felt like for the most part, Michael Penix had answers.
He
Like
did.
they always say, there's a question. Okay, we're going to send this at you. What's your answer?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like he had those answers. His processing really impressed me last week.
It did.
And I think that is why so many people come out of this game like, I feel good. I feel good about Penix. It's almost like you're getting to that point where you're like, and obviously you want more games to go by, but it's like we're never truly out of it.
Yeah, as long as he's there.
Out of it.
Yes.
Penix has that it to him where it's like, you'll be in the game, but based on the fact we've never lost straight up overtime where he never got the ball back or the kicker missed the game-winning game-tie field goal. So, what was your impressions of Michael Penix, and what do you want to see from him against Minnesota's defense, where that's probably the strength of their team right now?
Yeah, so loaded, right? He's a great improviser, and a lot of the quarterbacks that improvise nowadays, like we seen it last week with Caleb Williams, he improvising, moving out of the pocket, scrambling for the would-be first down or the potential touchdown. We get all of that from Michael Penix, and he showed that on Sunday. This week here, he has to be a little bit more careful. I felt like in last week's game, this might sound strange, but I just felt like Penix was ahead of Zach Robinson's play calling. And what I mean by that is whatever Zach was dialing in his ear, Penix didn't like, and I felt like Penix was switching up a lot of the stuff that was going on within the game. He was adjusting when it should have been the offensive coordinator adjusting the game and schematically. So there were certain plays where I felt like, oh, he could get rid of it, but he went elsewhere for a bigger game. That's awesome. This week against the Minnesota Vikings, this is a true test because my God, Brian Flores, this guy is a mad scientist when it comes to the art of blitzing. Like he will literally bring everybody on the offensive line and then bail to a cover 2, a cover 6, a cover 4, which is like, how the hell is he doing this? This is where Penix's progression, his process has to be on point because Brian Flores is going to try to make Penix, throw into mistakes and into windows that he think may be available, but they're not. And I'm sure that we'll touch on some of the injuries that Minnesota has going on. But for this game, yeah, Penix, I think Penix just needs to rely on his smarts, his arm strength, and I think we'll be fine. We get a returning Darnell Mooney, and Drake London. Darnell Mooney, I think for me, is a bigger return than let's say Draco because last year, with Kirk, Mooney was able to feast on that secondary of Minnesota, 6 catches, 142 yards. So getting him back allows now, the stretch element of the offense where we might see a different scheme being trotted out by Brian Flores. He's not going to be able to do as many exotic things because he has to respect the speed that's on the outside.
Yeah, and I think too, I would kind of say too that I think Penix, he just has that confidence to him where he just, even when we were trailing, I remember there was like just a shot they showed to Penix and he was still smiling, still laughing.
Yeah.
Like you can tell he's not like, you know what I'm saying? He's kind of just, he's vibing. He loves the moment. He's played a lot of football.
Sure.
And,
he's been in big games. He knows what to do.
Exactly. So it's like, I feel like for him, he's just like, it's all part of the process. We're still writing the game. We just got to execute. We got to do our thing. So, obviously for him, I'm not really too worried about him, but it'll be interesting to see how he passes or how he goes about the Brian Flores test for sure.
Yeah.
Now, one person I think had a really good game last week, even though maybe he doesn't stand out to you stat-wise, Kyle Pitts. Listen, the way they used him last week, I said, was different. Like, I felt like first, when he got the ball, I felt like they were trying to get him in space a little bit.
They did.
They were trying to get him in space. Obviously, he's not the shiftiest guy, but he's the athletic guy.
Sure is.
Then also, I felt like Penix also kind of used him as a safety blanket.
Yeah.
Kind of like, all right, my second option there was Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
And with Cashman out, who is their best, Minnesota's best cover linebacker, even with Maggie out, I feel like this could be a week where maybe Kyle Pitts kind of has a bigger game. And I know that Penix is a guy who will look for him. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you spot on. You hit it on the head, right? Last week we saw the the usage of Kyle Pitts in a different fashion. More, it was put in motion more, just to see if what coverages they can dissect of what Bowles was trying to throw, more so for that matter. But also finding the favorable matchups. You mentioned, right? He's not the shiftiest guy, but he is athletic. I just felt like that athleticism, we needed it more in the beginning than we did towards the end. I think that's why he kind of came to life. And in this game, where we know right off rip, two of their best linebackers are out. This might be the time to feast, and especially in the middle of this Brian Flores defense with Cashman out, I think that's where you can open up some eyes and really do a lot of damage and essentially just take Brian Flores out of his own game. Losing those two guys is pivotal, as many people may believe it or not. Not having Cashman, who's, like you mentioned, their best coverage linebacker, and Van Ginkel, one of their top pass rushers, does change what you do on defense differently. Now it's on Zach Robinson, to see if he can pick up on those tendencies or those situations where he can put Pitts in the favorable 1v1 matchups, because I'll go with Kyle Pitts 9 times out of 10 in a matchup with a safety dropping down in the box, Metellus being their top safety. Or even Harrison Smith. I'll even go on a limb and say Harrison Smith too. He's 30 plus years of age, brother. You know what? We saw Kyle Pitts, put Levante David on skates last week, and Levante David, it was, Tampa Bay's best defender. So I need more of that 1v1 mismatches. Can Zach Robinson deliver and give us the Kyle Pitts that we've all been waiting for?
Yeah, and obviously that's something that people are waiting for the breakthrough.
Oh man,
and obviously, like I said, everybody knows on that play where Penix had scored that touchdown. Pitts was open on that play. He had made a football move. He made a football move. If he had better protection, he probably would have found Pitts wide open. But like I said, we see what Michael Penix can bring to the table. So one of the major topics coming out of last week's game was the running game. Just the fact that how ineffective it was. And obviously that's been something that's been a crux of this football team for years, the running game. That is the core of their team. That is what gets the ship going. It's just a whole debate. Is it the pistol? Is it the type of plays he's running out of the pistol? Like, what is it? Especially because they did have a higher end rushing attack last year. What do you think they're gonna do this week? Obviously, Raheem's mentioned it. Like, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get the running game right. Like, I think there's an emphasis like, hey, we got to be able to run the football this week. We definitely got Bijan involved passing wise, so we know we can do that. But we got to get him involved on the ground. How do you think the Falcons come out this week against Minnesota in the running game, especially because running game can help slow down that pass rush? It can help with so many different things, maybe even create play action opportunities for the team.
Yeah, so I feel like this week you have to take advantage of this. Both Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, which is the Minnesota defensive tackles in the middle, they're very aggressive guys. Now, that aggression, you got to make them pay for. And how do you do that? Inside zone. We had success last week running that. Sure, it may, in some sets, it may have looked like we were running at Vita Vea, but that wasn't the case. There is an assignment within that itself, and we had success that way. What we don't want to do is run laterally. I think that every team in the NFL is ready for a Charlie Warner. Just a quick wham block, and that's where the run's going to go. you got to get away from what's been predictable on this Atlanta Falcons running game. You got to do more inside zone. I think you can find success there more. And the times that we did run it, especially with Algier, we did get some, some respectable, yak after the run. But it wasn't. We didn't stick to it enough that we could have potentially changed the outcome of the game. And this week we need to do that. We need to find what we do best. 3 or 4 plays that really, just gash Minnesota and just stick to it, because then obviously, like you mentioned, the play action pass can come to life. Waggle boots can come to life. Other things that we couldn't do last week. So this week we really have to we have to stick. We have to get back to the basics of our run game. We only had 48 total rush yards, if I'm not mistaken, from the 2 running back, which is like asinine. This is a team that lives and dies off the run game, and brother, man, we certainly took an L in that aspect. But there's another point that I like to bring up right quick. Bijan mentioned something interesting. He said that Bulls threw something at them different that they haven't seen before schematically. So that's what led them to not being able to like really get that run game going. So I mean, in this week, again, Dwayne Ledford, Zach Robinson, open up your eyes, brother, and do you gotta adjust within the game. They have to do the important things, and it has to get done against Minnesota.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you don't really want to try to out scheme anybody. You just gotta figure, okay, what's the answer?
Yeah,
everything is a question and answer. All right, this is what they're posed to us. How do we respond? And so obviously that's going to be very important for them to kind of get that going. I'm curious to see how they're going to use Bijan again as a receiver this week. Because like I said, I think that's an emphasis to get him involved in that regard. So I'm curious if they could also maybe take advantage of the fact that Minnesota's down a couple of linebackers as well.
Yeah.
Space. I can see Zach Robinson doing that. Obviously, we talked about them getting Mooney back, Drake back, Mooney really for down the field shots. But obviously, I think offensive line is like a question.
Yeah, it took a step back last week, man.
Yeah, I think Elijah Wilkerson. We know he's we just need to be serviceable.
That's it.
Ryan Nudzel. It's one of those things where, and Matthew Bergeron didn't have a great game either last week. So
neither guard did.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely like a lot of room for improvement here.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that is why the Falcons maybe didn't take any deep shots last week? Because maybe they're like, I don't know if we can hold up.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe this week they're kind of like, listen, we got to take shots. So we got to maybe do some maybe more max protects or keep Bijan in just to be able to do that? Because I think you have Michael Penix with the arm talent that he has. We've seen deep shots all through camp. We need to start seeing them in the game.
Sure. Yeah, I think this offensive line is going to be looking to get a lick back because, bro, they took a severe step backwards. But that's, Vita Vea, Kalaje Cansey, probably the best, defensive tackle duo in the league. They proved to be too much for Bergeron, Newziel, and Chris Lindstrom. Chris Lindstrom, he looked pretty bad in that game last week against the Bucks, and this week against Hargraves and Jonathan Allen. I think it's a get-back game for this Atlanta Falcons offensive line. I know both of those gentlemen are very prideful, being Bergeron and Lindstrom. That I know that they're salivating right now. They wish the game was today. So I know that they're going to key in on that and just make their, put forward their best effort. Now I don't know if leaving Bijan in for max protect or even adding an extra lineman is going to be the case this week. You might see it just in case we're going to take a deep shot, but I squarely believe that this offensive line will bounce back in the best positive way this week. I don't think we're going to need any extra help. Elijah Wilkerson, he was serviceable, but you really didn't hear the impact Hassan Reddick, could have potentially made. He did good. Now, could be different. Jonathan Grenade is going to be lining up on his side. Could Atlanta maybe, leave Warner in on that side? There's a potential, but I just feel like overall, I think this is a bounce back game for this Falcons offensive line going into Sunday night.
Yeah, and I hope so. I mean, that would be very, a welcome sight to see the offensive line kind of bounce back from what happened last week, especially against the Minnesota Vikings this week. So, 2 more questions for you, and I'll let you go, Berto.
No doubt.
Got to ask about the kicker situation. They signed John Parker Romo. Koo, they've been competing. They're both on the roster. We, I guess, don't know who's kicking.
Mhm.
We know that someone's going to be taking a new kickoff, like just
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Bradley Pinion was back there.
You know, what do you think, man? Is it do they need to go with John Parker Romo tomorrow? Is it like, because I mean, to me, I said the fact that he came out and said we have to change how we view certain situations because of the kicking game. You're literally telling us we don't trust our kicker now.
We don't trust our kicker. Exactly. So, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Romo tomorrow night. In fact, how much worse can he be than Koo at this point, right? Koo has missed some clutch kicks. If Romo comes in and goes, a 4 for 5 or something like that, then I'm riding that ship until the wheel, until it's done. You know what I mean? I can pretty much put Koo to rest. Yeah, sure. Some people may mention that his contract it might be inflated enough it won't make a business decision to get rid of him. But at the end of the day, man, you got to just learn how to take your L and go with it. Yeah. So if Parker is the guy, has been showing that he's been the guy in this short week in practice, then you got to roll with Romo, man, and just allow Koo on the bench or whatever you want to designate him as, and just go forward. But moving on from Koo, I think is not as far as some people may think it is.
Yeah, and I think, listen, if he won the competition and he kicks well, and from what I've seen, he's been good. Like Romo's been good. Like he was good in UFL, XFL, whatever they called it at the time. Mm-hmm. And then he was fine with Minnesota when he got to do it for pitch situation last year. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he has a bad track record coming in here.
No, right.
He kicked a 57-yarder, so he has a leg. Because the really big issue is, like I said this on my video Monday. I said the kicking game's changed. Back like 20 years ago, if you could kick a 40-yard field goal, you were considered a good kicker. 50-yard, elite. Like 55 was like you're elite. Now 40-yard is like that's
a chip shot.
Routine. That should be routine for you.
Right.
50 is like, all right, you're all right, you're pretty good. And then if you're kicking 55 plus, you're elite. So the fact that Koo's missing 40s, that's the problem. You're missing.
That's the problem.
If you miss a 58-yarder, it's like, okay.
You can see that.
We know that it's not as probable. You're missing 40s.
Yeah, man. We need to have a man in the mirror moment, bro.
So I think that's where it'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle that situation, how that does change it. Does that make them become more aggressive on fourth down?
Yeah,
that'll be something to look at as well. So my last question for you, man, is like, after everything we talked about, for you, what is the number one thing Falcons have to do to get the win tomorrow on Sunday Night Football?
Man, establish a good offense. Find a balance passing and throwing the ball. You want to keep this Brian Flores defense on its heels at all times. So for me, it's just finding a good consistent balance on offense and sticking to it. And on defense, it's only been one game, but you're already proven that you can get after the quarterback. Continue to establish that. Hopefully some of these rushes actually do get home, but hopefully when they do get home, they make the opposition pay for it within a turnover, INT, whatever you may want to call it. So that for me is where I'm at with Atlanta. Find a balance on offense, stay true to your game on defense. And thus far, Atlanta is a blitzing team right now. It's crazy to say because even last year we weren't a high blitzing team. So off in just one game, seeing 40% for a game, like, wait, damn, holy crap, man. We were sending them 5 or more. So that's what I want to see. Just get those two areas in check, and I will be fine.
Yeah, and obviously, excited to see how the young players play again this week. See if they can make some plays. Excited to see Penix, like I said, how he answers the Brian Flores challenge, and just kind of see if they get the running back on track. And hopefully, like I said, you win this game. You got Panthers next week. You feel better about going to the Commanders game, and then you have the bye week. So it'll be interesting to kind of see because this can very much dictate a lot of things and how people feel about the season. Right. Obviously after this Sunday night game. But hey, Berto, I appreciate you coming on to the show, man. Talk about some Falcons with me. Let people know where they can find you.
Oh, man. Yes. So, of course, man, your boy Berto, host of the 95 North Falcons talk show on YouTube. You could find me there on Wednesday, but I am the host of the duo Reporting Eligible, myself and Bro Talk, every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. On Tuesdays, you can find me on NFC South Roundtable, part of the Roundtable Sports family. I am the Falcons content creator in that space. And you can also find me on Bleacher Report Monday through Thursday, dropping short form content for the Falcons, topic related, anything that's relevant and important to the Falcons. You go there, you'll find what you need to know. And also you can find me on Bleacher Report after every game, after the Falcons go final, win or lose, breaking it down, giving my analysis on the game that evening and the afternoon. So those are the platforms that you can find me on in this busy Falcons content world.
That man could be doing a couple of late recaps with like 4 primetime games we got. So that boy better be,
bro. I'm finna be on tomorrow till maybe like 1 a.m. Dead ass, man. It's gonna be a late one tomorrow.
About everything that just happened. Nah, I get that.
Yeah, sure. Brother. Yes, sir.
Yeah, like I said, man, I appreciate you. And obviously, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video down below, leave a comment about anything we discussed today. Follow me on Twitter, Bryce_2K for all my takes. Obviously, I tweet during the Falcons game. Same thing as well tomorrow, even though I'm at work. And we'll continue to do what we can, man. But like I said, man, we have to see what the Falcons do. Big game, Sunday Night Football, national championship rematch, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's it for us. That's Berto. I'm Bryce. See you next time.